going on, coaches? This is Coach Lane, CEO and founder of Coach's Mind, and we are bringing you Coach's Mind podcast. I would like to say Happy New Year's. I hope you're safe, and I hope you take care of yourself and your families. But we're excited to be bringing this podcast. We got a little X and O talk brought to you by Che Dawson from Heinlein Community College. He's going to be talking to us about the 2-3 zone. And I like this podcast because there's so many things said about zone in general, the positives and more negatives about the zone. And I know some people are just strictly man guys and that's what they love, and that's great, that's cool. But I'm asking you for this podcast to be open-minded and to listen to some of the things that Coach Dawson is going to be talking about with the zone. He gives great points, great gems to really make you consider why not running the zone. Now, if you remember from my podcast that championships are won by your offense and defense gives you a chance to win championships, I think the 2-3 zone just does that, gives you that opportunity to win games. Because when Coach Dawson ran this for 4 years, he produced a 70-20 record. He held teams to about 30% from the three-point line, and he held teams to 1 point and below points per possession. So the 2-3 zone was very effective and gave him many opportunities with that. And he's going to talk to you about some of the philosophies and ideas that come with that 2-3 zone. So if you like this podcast, I would love if you click, subscribe, leave some comments. You can also see this video of this podcast on our YouTube channel. All you have to do is search Coach's Minds and you will find it. You can do it in 2 separate words, COACHES space Minds, MINDS, and you will find it and you will see the video of this podcast on our YouTube channel. So again, if you like it, click subscribe. But I really want you to enjoy this podcast, take notes, check out the philosophy, and I can guarantee this is going to help you in your season coming up.
Hey everybody, we are going to cover the Syracuse 2-3 zone today, and I'm excited about this because I got introduced to the Syracuse 2-3 back in 2013. We were trying to find a zone that we could use based on our personnel, based on some rule changes that they had talked about were going to be implemented. And as we were looking around for a good zone, I had always been a man-to-man guy, and I'll try to loosely follow my outline here. But I had always been a man-to-man guy. That's what I was raised on. We'd had a fair amount of success running almost exclusively man-to-man defense, won an NWAC title running almost exclusively man-to-man. And so I had all of the zone perceptions that most people do. And that's one of the points I want to make today is that zone was not a real popular defense taught throughout the 80s, 90s, and even up through today. There's a bias, in my opinion, against zone. And that doesn't mean that zone should be considered better than man-to-man. Obviously, there's a lot of variables that can impact that. But I definitely think that there's a bias against zone that sometimes doesn't allow coaches, or doesn't lend itself to coaches using zone effectively and committing to playing some zone defense. And there's no better example of the effectiveness of the zone than Coach Boeheim and Syracuse. So we started studying that. And one of the things that we started to find out real quick is that you have to commit to the zone, just like you have to commit to any offense, or any strategic scheme. If you think about it, when you run a certain offense, you're pretty committed to that, right? You generally don't spend a season running 25% flex, 25% motion, 25% dribble drive, 25%, high 1-4. You usually have your one base offense that you're committed to, and you might have some sets and some wrinkles that you apply. Same thing with your defense. Typically, if you're a man-to-man team, you'll typically be committed to that. If you're a pressing team, a lot of times you'll be committed to that. But for whatever reason, with zone, a lot of people just think, okay, we need to have a zone in case we want to use it for a few possessions. But then as soon as someone figures it out, then we have to get out of it. So the most important thing, if you're going to run a zone, is you need to commit to it. And with Boeheim, that commitment now means 100% of the time they are running zone. His book, Bleeding Orange, actually does a really good job, not necessarily of explaining how to run the zone, but a lot of the philosophy behind it, breaking down some of the conventional wisdom around it. So we started running the Syracuse 2-3. We really committed to it. We committed to learning all the nuances of teaching it in 2013. And we went on a run over a 4-year span of, I think we were something like, 70 something and 20 something. We were really good. And we were really, really good defensively. Now, for a variety of reasons over the last few years, we've gotten away from running the Syracuse 2-3, but that doesn't mean we won't go back to it. I was a huge, huge fan of it, still am a big fan of it. And so a few things I want to point out. Duke versus Syracuse. So if you get a chance, watch a Duke versus Syracuse game. It's fascinating because one of the things about the Syracuse 2-3 that just made me really intrigued is how is it that these high level coaches who know that the zone is coming, who know basically how it's run, how is it that they consistently get beat by it? It really doesn't make any sense based on what I've always known about 2-3 zones, which is, you just get the ball to the high post and, skip opposite or look high-low, attack gaps, all those things we've been taught. It doesn't make sense that Syracuse would continue to win basketball games at that high a level against that good of players running the 2-3. There's got to be something to that. So if you watch a Duke-Syracuse game, obviously you'll see two incredibly successful coaches who will show you how to attack the zone and how to run the zone. So I highly recommend that. Our defensive stats over those 4 years that we ran the Syracuse 2-3 were really, really good. We paid a lot of attention to three-point percentage, opponents' three-point field goal percentage, which was for us was really good. It was always in the 31 to 32% range, which is really good. And then our points per possession that we gave up was always really good. It was usually down just above 1 point per possession. And so, we were really good defensively. One of the conventional pieces of wisdom about zone is that that you're not going to be able to put as much pressure on people. You're not going to turn people over. And I know for at least a couple of those years, we were in the top 5 in the NWAC in steals. It's another reason to another way that zone mentality can get in the way of committing to the zone. So there's no way I can, in let's say an hour, really get into all of the nuances and how to teach the zone. Because it really, once you get into it, it really gets in depth. And that is the thing that makes the zone effective. It's like anything else. Your man-to-man defense, if you were to just say, okay, I want everybody to go out and guard their man, well, that's not going to give you a very good man-to-man defense. What do you have to work on? You've got to work on, which way you're going to force the basketball, if any, when you're guarding it, how much you're going to pressure it, how much you're going to worry about denying the next pass, how much you're going to focus on rotation when there's help, how far out are you going to pick up? All of those little nuances have to be applied to zone too to make it effective. You can't just put 5 guys in spots and say, okay, just kind of guard your area. So some philosophy behind it. The 3-point shot. Most people, the thing that scares them the most against zone is the 3-point shot. And one of the things you'll find is that in a lot of ways, it's actually easier to guard the 3-point line running a good zone than it is man-to-man. Think about it this way. How many threes are shot over the course of a season in every level of college basketball? how many threes are shot at a high percentage at every level of college basketball? How many of those are against man-to-man defense? A lot. I'm going to guess, let's just say 90% of all threes are made against man-to-man defense. So it's not like people don't make threes against man-to-man. They just get them in different ways. They get them by breaking down their man, getting into the lane, forcing help, pitching, reversing the basketball quickly, those kinds of things. So the three-point shot, you'll find, is actually not as hard to guard in the zone as you might think. Some of that is because where guys are standing, and a lot of times that's exactly what they're doing, is standing, you're able to know where they are. You're able to predict and get a feel after a while of where the threes are going to come from. Their three-point shots are usually catch and shoot shots, which a lot of kids nowadays are not as good at. A lot of guys need rhythm threes. There's a rhythm to attacking your man in a man-to-man defense, pitching, showing, attacking, pitching one more time, and then hitting that three. There's a rhythm to that you don't necessarily have when you're playing your zone offense. The mid-range shot. So if you're looking at the value of shots, and this goes to a lot of the Vance Wahlberg dribble drive principles, but if you're looking at the value of shots, this mid-range shot right in here, which is where most people tell their teams they want to get the basketball, is your lowest value shot, right? It's only worth 2 points, and it's about as far away as you can get for a 2-point shot. Oftentimes people will put a big guy in there, and so that lends itself to a guy who's probably not as good a shooter shooting a low value shot. You are oftentimes you're not getting the other team isn't getting to the foul line if they're shooting that mid-range shot. The Huskies, UW has done a really good job of just sort of, again, this depends on the scout, but just sort of leaving the high post alone, really protecting the 3-point line, really protecting the basket, and just sort of leaving that high post area alone. Layups, it's a lot more difficult to get layups against the zone than it is against a man-to-man defense typically. Again, this is where the teams that hurt the Syracuse 2-3 are not the teams necessarily that just shoot the three ball well. It's the ones who get the ball to the basket in a variety of ways. But again, that takes a little bit more teamwork, a little bit more thinking, a little bit more understanding than when a guy just comes down with a full head of steam and decides he's going to break his guy down and force help. The foul game. So conventional wisdom, again, is that, well, you foul less in a zone. And that doesn't necessarily play out to be true. Now, you may not foul a lot in a zone, but a lot of times your zone team, if you're not a super aggressive man team, your zone team is not going to foul a whole lot less than your man team. So if you play a lot of pack line, man-to-man defense where there's ball pressure, but a lot of help taking away drives to break down your defense, you're not necessarily going to foul less if you play zone. Scouting, this is a big one. Scouting is easier for several reasons. Number one, there's a lot less opportunities to set screens. Number two, penetration really gets cut down. Part of that is because of the formation of the Syracuse 2-3. Part of that is because kids tend to just not be as aggressive when they're playing against a zone. Post-action, people really don't post up the zone. They go and find spots rather than going and finding a guy, particularly your middle guy here, that you can go and post up. And player tendencies. So now you have minimization of, okay, do we need to worry about whether this guy is predominantly left or predominantly right when he attacks? Do we need to concern ourselves with whether this guy is really good at a mid-range jumper or not? You start to really minimize the options that the offensive players have, which then, of course, minimizes their ability to play to their strengths necessarily. And then the zone offense action, and this is one of Boeheim's big things. And actually, Rick Pitino is another one who really utilizes zone a lot and obviously has been a phenomenally successful coach. there's only so many things you can run against a zone. There's 8 gazillion sets you can run against man-to-man, but there's only so many things you can run against any zone. And once you sort of have a handle on what a team is going to run, that makes your scouting a lot easier rather than having to worry about those 8 gazillion sets that might be coming at you. So that's an advantage when it comes to scouting. Other things behind the philosophy of playing zone. Opponents work on man-O more from the start of the season. Most coaches, when you start working on offense, what do you start working on? You start working on your man offense. Most coaches do not start their season or spend a whole lot of time on their zone offense. They will prepare for the zone in a short window of time before they actually play a zone team. But most people are heavily weighted towards their man-to-man offense. It takes patience. You actually feel like you have a lack of control because you're not guarding a guy. But in a lot of ways, as a team, you actually have more control. As a zone team, I'm going to dictate what you're going to run offensively rather than me having to react to what you run offensively. But you have to be patient with it. Some teams are going to hit some threes. They're going to do some things to break it down, and you have to be patient. And related to that is you have to make it better. Again, most teams, if the zone gets beat on a couple of possessions in a row, what's the coach's natural instinct? What's the player's natural instinct? Well, we have to get out of it. But that's not what you do with your man-to-man defense. If people score on your man-to-man defense, what do? You call timeout. You get on some guys about playing harder or playing smarter or helping better or taking charges, those kinds of things. You do it better rather than getting out of it. So you have to have that same mentality with zone. But that's probably one of the biggest hurdles that coaches have is just staying with it, sticking with it, staying patient with it. Again, kids and offenses don't attack naturally against zones. You can see these guys right now are just, they go and stand in spots. That's their natural instinct. And so you're actually having to, obviously good players and good coaches know that you have to attack a zone, but it's an uphill battle to get them to do that. That's not their natural instinct. Whereas when kids are being guarded man to man, their natural instinct is to attack. So you're already ahead of the game that way. Kids can't pass. And, I say that to say that it's, in my opinion, I don't think there's any doubt that now compared to 30 years ago, kids are so much better putting the ball on the ground, all kids, than they are at actually passing the ball. Fundamentally, they don't pass the ball very well when it comes to, how the ball leaves their hands, stepping into their pass, their ability to pivot, some of those kinds of things, and their ability to just see other things. But they're all really, really good at breaking people down off the dribble. So you're ahead of the game that way. Long rebounds. So a lot of times you force people into long contested shots, which mean long rebounds, which means transition opportunities the other way. Again, conventional wisdom tells you that, if you're playing zone, you're slowing down the tempo, this, that, and the other, which is not necessarily the case, especially with the shot clock. Length and quickness helps, but isn't absolutely necessary. I mean, certainly if you look at Syracuse, one of the reasons that their zone is so effective is because they've usually got, 7-footer in the middle. They've got a 6'10" guy on one wing. They've got a 6'8" guy on the other wing. They've usually got a 6'5" two guard, and then they might have a smaller point guard, or one of the guards might be a little bit smaller. That helps if you have length, but it's critical for that length to be quick. The quickness part is more important than the length part. If you have slow on your back line especially, or even on your front line, then that's going to be a difficult thing to overcome. So but if you can get length and quickness, that helps. That's one of the reasons we got away from the Syracuse 2-3. We were really good defensively for a couple of years, and we had a pretty long back line, but we found ourselves struggling to score at times. And that was because a lot of times at our level, if a guy is 6'5", 6'6", and he's a wing, well, chances are he's not great offensively. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't be at our level if he's a great 6'5", 6'6" scorer on the wing. So we started recruiting a little bit smaller so that we'd get a little better offensively. And so then that changed the dynamics of what we were doing defensively. But again, we're always re-examining that. Playing zone allows your zone offense to get better. So when people do zone you and you play against zone every day in practice, it's way, way easier. You end up spending 80% of your time on offense in practice playing your zone offense. Maybe not even that much, maybe 50% of your time. That's way more than 5% of your time playing against a bad zone when you're working on your zone offense, but you're a man-to-man defensive team, right? You have a bad zone that you put out there so that you can work on your zone offense. That's not going to make your zone offense a whole lot better. So you have that advantage. And then the shot clock limits the time to attack. If teams had an indefinite amount of time to work your zone or your man, they'd have an advantage, certainly. But, when they only have 30 seconds to figure out how they're going to get a good shot against it, that can make it a little bit more difficult. So, so that's a lot of the philosophy behind it. Now let's look at some of the basic alignment again. And this is all stuff that's the nuances of, or that make the Syracuse 2-3 zone unique. Usually when we think 2-3 zone, we think, okay, two guards up top. They're kind of, at the elbows, if you will, a wing down in the corner area, the big in the middle, and another wing down in the corner area. One of the most critical things about this zone is these two guards up top have to be tight. And early on, you have to exaggerate this. So we'll literally say you need to be able to not only touch your teammate's hand, you need to be able to touch his body. You guys are almost like one human being up here. Because as the game goes along and there's slippage, they'll start to split apart a little bit. So if you exaggerate how tight they have to be, it'll be a lot better. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, it takes away that gap that the guy can split from the top. And number two, it makes it more difficult to pass that thing into the high post if these guys have their hands up. Okay, that pass ends up being a slow pass, which is critical for another reason. Well, if these guys are tight, what do most 2-3 zone offenses or zone offenses against a 2-3, where do they align? They usually have some sort of a 3-out alignment. So if these two guys are sort of guarding this guy, you have to bring your wings up to guard their wings. Okay, so these guys cannot start flat. And again, early on, you have to exaggerate this. You have to, when you first show them the zone, don't even show them a flat 2-3 and then say, okay, now you guys have to come up. Because right away, their thought is, okay, this is the default. Instead, you almost want to show them like a four-person front and then this guy down here by himself. Okay, so, and then your center has to stay deep under the basket when the ball is on top, because usually you'll have these three guys, you'll have a guy in the high post area, and then you'll have a guy in the baseline or in the short corner area. So this guy has to stay deep since the wings are high so that there can't be a lob over the top to this guy. Okay, let's see how this plays out just a little bit here. So you can see our wing came way up. Now the guard, when the ball gets passed to the wing, the guard comes over and bumps him off. And one of the critical things here, we don't see the action right now, but if there's a guy in what we call the long corner out here, this wing has to be so far out that this can't be a direct chest pass, because that you're done then. That pass has to be a pass over the top of the wing if he's going to throw to the corner. Passes over the top give time for the zone to react. If you have direct chest passes, those are going to make it really difficult. So he goes down to the long corner. Now, what you can do, you can deny the pass out if you want to. If you want this guy to suck in, you can. You could decide you want your big to always front the post down here. Your weak side wing has to drop into the middle there. They throw kind of into the high post area, and I think we pick up a foul reaching. Oh, no, it's just a deflection. But you can see their guys are really standing around. We get a skip. Now that's pretty sloppy. Our wing goes ahead and jumps, takes the head fake. But the positive to that is he ran him off the three-point line. And if you run him off the three-point line, then he's on the move. And any shot on the move is usually more difficult than a shot where you're standing and shooting. Now, this guard here, so this is a critical nuance, this guard here should always be low enough that there's no gap between the wing and the guard. That's the gap that they'll attack. Because remember, this wing is always going to be on the low side to take away the pass to the corner. So this guard, he's out here too far. He should be taking away this gap right here. We're pretty sloppy. But then you had the big step up. The weak side wing, it's critical. Anytime the ball gets inside the three-point line on the opposite side of the floor, this wing has to get over to the midline for a variety of reasons. But he has to take away any action where they go like short corner and try to pass to the guy coming down from the high post. He has to jam all of that up. This weak side guard, this is critical too. The guards, when the ball gets into the middle of the floor, the guards cannot get sucked in. It is not their job ever to take the ball in this high post area. They have to start flaring out to guard the three-point line. So we get a contested three, terrible rebounding right there. Now that brings up a good point because, again, conventional wisdom is that the weakness of a zone, of any zone, is rebounding the basketball. And it's certainly more difficult, but there's a couple things to think about that way. Usually when shots go up, again, the tendency of the players on the perimeter is not to crash because they're already just sort of in standing mode. So shot goes up, unless they're really focused on it, they typically don't crash, which then usually leaves you one, maybe two guys inside going to the glass, okay? Well, and we teach some different rotations on who you're supposed to box out, but usually there's a guy who it's pretty easy, even though you're not matched up man-to-man with him, there's a guy that you can – that should be in a certain area that you can find and put a body on him and stop him from getting an offensive rebound. But we do a terrible job here. We put a body on him, and then we don't make any effort to move him away. We don't make any effort to hold the box out, and this guy just does a good job of outworking us. You can see we teach what we call looking out, not boxing out. So our weak side wing actually turns and looks and goes and makes contact rather than just turning and looking at the ball and putting his butt to this guy. But that's terrible right there. But again, most people will say, okay, God, we got to get out of the zone. They're killing us on the offensive glass. Well, why not just say we need to do a better job when it's time to put bodies on people? Let's take a look again at what this looks like. So we've got our guards tight up top. Our wings start out high. They're doing a good job of putting two guys on the baseline. You might say, well, man, isn't it easy to get beat? Well, number one, again, if these guys, this is where length helps. If these guys have some length and they have their hands up, that makes this pass, this is usually your smallest guy on the court, right? Your point guard. Makes this pass difficult down here or down here. This guy has to do a good job of reading. So if this guy's looking this direction, he should probably shade this way just a little bit, okay? But most people don't start out in that 3-2 alignment. They'll go ahead and plant a guy in the middle there so there's only one guy on the baseline. So he goes ahead and makes that pass, and that's the situation I talked about before that's critical. So he makes that pass. Watch our opposite wing here does a great job of getting down to the midline and taking away that next pass. Short corners are automatic traps, okay? Short corners are automatic traps. So you can see basic rotations, ball on top. I've shown you what that looks like when the ball goes to the wing. I've shown you what that looks like. in terms of the taking away the corner pass. The ball goes into the short corner. That's an automatic trap. We haven't seen the ball go into the high post yet. When the ball goes to the corner, we've seen that. And if the ball goes to the low post, again, you can decide if you want to double it, you want to front it, you want to play it straight up, okay? But we get passed down there, automatic trap when the ball goes into this short corner area. And you can see, if this guy hasn't been conditioned to do it, they end up with a layup right here. But because we've repped so hard and so often, this guy has got to hustle down and take away the next pass on the short corner trap. He gets there. And a lot of times we actually get steals because this looks so open. That was really good rotation right there. We won't cover out of bounds plays and how we play those. That's a whole nother set of. Okay, so early on, we're getting beat pretty good here inside on these first couple of possessions. You can see we do talk a lot about on baseline out of bounds, the zone has to shape up quickly. We don't let anything go inside, but then as soon as it gets out there, everybody's got to shape up quickly. They just post them up. And again, that's effective. A lot of teams don't post up the zone. They go and stand in spots instead. So let's see what we look like here. Ball goes to the long corner. Shape it up. Wing tags. We call that the wing tagging right there. Let's go back there. So that's our wing coming out and tagging that until the guard can bump him. Boom. There's the guard bumping him. Now the ball goes back top. This guy has to guard that until the other guard shapes back up, and then they're both guarding him. I think they try to set a little outside shoulder screen. This guy the guards cannot get beat on the dribble on their outside shoulder. If that happens, you're done. So he does a good job of working back over the top. Guy's trying to penetrate, nowhere to go, tries to penetrate, and he hits another tough shot. And you wouldn't know it, but we ended up winning this game by about 20 points, I think. And this is exactly where right now most people their instinct would say, we got to get out of it. They scored 3 times in a row here. But you have to have some patience with it. Long corner. They post up. Get a shot. And look at the offensive rebounding they had. Virtually none. One guy going to the glass, everybody else standing. I'll take those odds any day. So there's the bump from the guard. That's where length would help. We get a guy crashing from the weak side. We're not doing a very good job on a lot of things here. But this guy, you can see he jumps out. So this pass has to be, he should have gotten out there wider earlier. But you can see if this guy is 6'7", and this guy's having to throw that over the top of him, that pass doesn't get down there as quickly. So he runs down. He ends up shooting a 3. We got crashing on the weak side. Guys aren't looking out, but they don't score off of it, okay? I'm going to show you a little bit of
All right, my first question is, how do you play the post? Do you front it, three-quarter it? How do you go about playing the post?
3 out of the 4 years we played the 2-3, we had pretty big middle guys, so we just played behind.
Got you.
We talked to them about, you want to try to not let the guy catch too deep in there. Mm-hmm. But we just played behind. Sometimes we would go and trap it. So if the ball got passed in from the wing into the post, we'd have the wing turn around and go trap it, basically treat it like it's a short corner entry.
Got it. Yep.
And then one of those 4 years, we actually had a smaller, about a 6'4" kid playing inside who, and we were, let me see. Well, we won the region title that year. But Isom was just one of those kids who just played his fucking nuts off every second. And he was really smart and he talked. and just brought unbelievable energy. And he actually wasn't even a great, like, he was the kid who you would think he would have averaged 7 or 8 boards a game because of how hard he plays, and he'd get like 2. But what he was always doing was he was always making sure that the guy down there wasn't getting an offensive rebound.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he would just go sacrifice his body and make sure that that guy didn't get the rebound, and we'd come down, our guards might come down and rebound or whatever. So with him, I think we still had him play behind, but we always, I think, doubled if it got in there with him.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, I know sometimes Washington and even Syracuse, did you ever have a big, kind of like you had in one of your clips, how it was kind of overloaded? Your wing comes out high, pressures the ball at the wing, and they had a corner guy come out to that. You call it the long corner, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever have your bigs run to that corner pass?
We never did that. Now, I know Washington does that, and I think Syracuse does that sometimes too. We never did that though. We would try to scout if people were gonna send their guy to the long corner a lot, and what we would do then is we made sure that guard bump and the wing drop to the corner was really fast. We made sure that there was no direct pass from the wing to the corner. The ball had to go over the top of the wing defender,
okay,
to slow down the pass.
Okay.
And obviously, the longer that guy is on the wing, the better for that. And then the other thing is, if the ball did get down there and that long corner drove the baseline, we got our guys to understand, like, we want that because he's essentially going to the short corner, but he's just going there on the dribble rather than the pass. Let's trap him there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, that long corner can present problems if you don't scout and prepare for it, if you don't really do a good job, if you don't have some length on the wing, and if you don't really do a good job of getting out to the sideline so that it can't be a quick chest pass down there.
Have
or
you
a quick bounce pass.
Have you ever, in your experience running, have you ever just pinned it in that corner, having your wing flip its hip and just basically not let it back out of the corner?
We haven't typically denied it back out, no. No, we've usually had the ball side guard sort of drop into that elbow area when the ball went to the long corner. Yeah.
Got it.
But I suppose you could, again, depending on scout, depending on, how much the other team turns the ball over, that kind of stuff. Yeah.